Men and women of all ages are shedding their bodies. Men sculpting their torsos and calves as if they were replicas of the world's greatest athletes. Women sometimes not even following a pattern, just throwing away pieces of themselves at whatever cost. We live in a world where Ken and Barbie are the perfect match, and rounder men are deemed as lazy, and rounder women just aren't trying enough. This past year, I lost over 10 pounds because of anxiety. I was proud of it. In fact, there's still a part of me that is proud of it, because although I know that my appearance does not define me, I have not yet learned to completely love the shell of a body that I've been given. I look in the mirror longer than I should, but how can I stop when I've always used it to measure my worth? I'm constantly consumed with thoughts of trying to impress people, most of the time, trying to impress boys who couldn't care less about me. I've never had a boyfriend. I haven't had my first kiss, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. But part of me wonders why my success rate is non-existent. And I start to wonder where I went wrong. And only sometimes do I stop to remind myself that maybe I'm not the problem. Maybe I've just been looking for all the wrong guys. Like the one who called me a ditz because I laughed a little too much. Or the one who otherwise treated me like I was invisible, who talked to me just to get answers to a test. I didn't give him the answers, by the way. Or perhaps my worst heartbreak to date, the guy who led me on for several months just for me to find out secondhand through social media that he had a girlfriend the whole time. Because of my success rate, I've learned to become a private investigator when I find someone new, researching as to every clue to their flaws. Believe me, I do more analyzing when it comes to boys than I do on my English papers. I could do a 10-page comparative essay on me and the other girl, quoting text messages and body language, tying each argument back to the thesis statement, aka him, citing sources such as the guy who heard from a girl who thinks she saw something and the Instagram likes he left on her page. Title, who he will choose, and in parentheses, probably her. But in the end, I'd get a failing grade because the body paragraphs dealing with the other girl didn't have enough supporting evidence. It doesn't matter. I continue to analyze every interaction he makes with another girl. We overanalyze because we're searching for any reason as to why it wouldn't work. And who can blame us when it never has? When we always find ourselves with those who belittle our happiness and dilute our worth to a letter on a report card. We as a human race are compelled to believe that we must walk in pairs. Of course, I want to find someone. I want someone who will love and accept me. Because isn't that what we're looking for? Acceptance? To be seen in someone else's eyes as beautiful? Worth something? We always try to find the perfect person, and just because you think that they are perfect doesn't mean that they think you are. That's where the change comes in, filling the mold of the person they want you to be. You start to lose yourself until the shadow of the person you used to be is hanging by a thread at the edge of a cliff, and you reach for that perfect person, your soulmate, to lift you back up. But most of the time, they just walk away. And then you fall, longer and harder with each failed love. You'll get back up eventually after days, weeks, months, maybe even years. You climb back up that mountain and find a new peak, sure that it will be different the next time. But higher heights only mean harder falls. We should be searching for the person who will sew us back together, who will leave it to us and us alone to create the mold that we will fill. Instead of searching for the acceptance of others, we should first be searching for the acceptance of ourselves, and then only second, finding that person who can accept our own acceptance. But even then, there's the rest of the world to worry about. Getting in with the right group of friends, doing the things they want you to do just so they like you. Stick to the status quo, their glares scream at you as you sing your heart out to Cyndi Lauper down the crowded streets of the city. Girls just want to have fun, but they can't because of the cool factor. We are so often forced to suppress our inner desire to express ourselves because those who enforce the rigid rules of society are often those who are too cowardly to break them themselves. All of this judgment and hate in the world starts with us as individuals, because when we see that no amount of concealer can ever truly conceal our God-given flaws, we resort to pointing out the flaws of other people to make our flaws seem minimal and thus put ourselves up on a pedestal. But soon enough, those that we tower over begin to build a sturdy staircase, little by little, step by step, until we find that they are twice as high as we are. And the pedestal built on the insecurities of others begins to crumble until we're left standing on a mound of our own buried insecurities. I want my children to live in a different world. A world where thin isn't a synonym of beautiful and fat isn't an antonym. A world where the judgment of others doesn't lead to the judgment of oneself, which too often now leads to self-harm. People in the world can be so cruel, and yet they are probably facing the same problems themselves. It's kind of like that infamous question about the chicken and the egg, except this time, what came first? The bully or the bullied? If we can start to learn to accept ourselves as individuals, then maybe we'll be able to become more accepting of other people. In fact, as I mulled over this idea in my head last night, I was trying to think of ways that I could prove that even the smallest acts of self-love can make the hugest differences. And so I was on my nightly walk around my streets when I was listening to my music and a really good song came on. I just wanted to dance. And instead of listening to the voice inside my head that was telling me to wait until I got home because no one wants to see me dancing, I just did it. I was jumping, twirling, doing the Macarena. I probably looked like an idiot, but I didn't care because I was happy. I did what in that moment I knew would make me the happiest, instead of worrying what other people were thinking about me, what the people in the cars driving past were thinking, what my neighbors were thinking. In fact, there was a part of me that wished they were. A part of me that wished that some woman just happened to be looking out of her window and saw me dancing. And maybe she laughed a little at first, but then maybe she saw how happy I was. And then, maybe, the next day, she goes out to the salon and gets the haircut that she's been wanting for months but hasn't gotten because she's afraid of what people will think of it. Small things, but small things can make a huge difference. So learn to love yourself. Maybe if people can learn to dance in the street, then my children will one day grow up in a different world. A world where they can break free from the stereotypes and become their own people. A world where they can dance in the street and it's just another form of exercise. A world where a friend group can consist of an athlete, an artist, and a brainiac, and nobody thinks anything of it. And then maybe different won't be so different anymore. So love your oddities. Be proud of yourself. There's a difference between being egotistical and being proud. Being egotistical is trying to give others reasons to love you, but being proud isn't depending on their approval. And pursue your own form of happiness. Learn to dance in the street. Refrain from becoming a carbon copy of the norm, and dare to break the mold.